Hi, friends. Happy Monday. Here we are, a brand new week. Last week, we spent some time rediscovering you, talking about who you are now, recognizing that God still has purpose for this season, and remembering that it's never too late to become who He created you to be. As I thought about where do we go from here, I kept coming back to something. Sometimes before we can embrace what's next, we actually have to make room for it. So that's our theme this week, making room for what's next, releasing what was, exploring what God is doing now. And today I want to start with a question that may step on your toes just a tiny bit. What are you still holding on to? Now, listen, I am not talking about the drawer in your house filled with cords to electronics that you haven't owned since 2007. Although, why do we keep those, right? Like we don't know what they go to. We haven't needed them for 14 years. But apparently we're convinced that Tuesday at 3:17 p.m. we're suddenly going to desperately need that exact cord. So it stays in the drawer. But we do something similar emotionally, don't we? We hold on to things long after they've stopped serving us. A disappointment, a hurt, a mistake, a relationship that changed, an expectation of how we thought life was supposed to look, maybe even a version of ourselves that just simply doesn't fit anymore. And sometimes we're so busy holding on to what was that our hands aren't open to receive what's next. Oof, that's a hard one. Because releasing something doesn't mean it didn't matter. It doesn't mean it didn't hurt. And it certainly doesn't mean we erase the memories and pretend everything was fine. Sometimes releasing simply means I'm not going to carry this into every new season God gives me. There's a passage in, I believe it's Isaiah 43, I love. God says, do not remember the former things, nor consider the things of old. Behold, I will do a new thing. And then I love what comes next. Now it shall spring forth. Shall you not know it? In other words, are you watching for it? Because sometimes we're staring so intently at the door that closed, we don't even notice what God is opening in front of us. And I've done that. I've had seasons I wanted to hold on to. I've had outcomes I wanted to change. I've had moments when I thought, God, this is not how I had this planned. And I'm pretty sure somewhere in heaven, God was saying, yes, Susan, I'm aware of your plan. Anybody else? We make the plan. We even color code the plan. We may even buy a cute notebook for the plan. We pray over the plan, and God says, we're going this way. Well, okay then. But looking back over my life, some of the things I fought hardest to hold on to were the very things God eventually showed me I needed to release. Because He wasn't trying to take something from me just to leave an empty space. He was making room. Room for growth, room for healing, for new relationships, for new opportunities. Room for a version of me I had not become yet. And maybe that's where you are today. Maybe there's something you've carried for so long that you don't even realize how heavy it has become. Maybe it's resentment, regret, guilt, an old dream, the expectation that life should look a certain way by now. Maybe it's simply this sentence: but I thought, but I thought my health would be different. But I thought my children would, blah, blah, blah. But I thought my career would, blah, blah, blah. I thought by this age I would, blah, blah, blah. Those are real losses, and we don't have to minimize them. But friends, what was can be honored without being carried forever. Let me say that again. What was can be honored without being carried forever. You can be grateful for a season and still let it end. You can love who you used to be and still become someone new. You can acknowledge what happened without allowing it to dictate what happens next. And sometimes letting go isn't one big dramatic moment. Sometimes it's a daily prayer. Lord, I'm giving this back to you again today. And then tomorrow, you might have to give it back again. Because apparently some of us like to hand things to God and then circle back 5 minutes later like, well, actually, I take that worry back. I wasn't quite finished with it. I know I'm not the only one. So here's what I want us to think about today. What am I still holding on to that God may be asking me to release? Now, you don't have to tell it on Facebook. This can be just between you and God. But be willing to ask the question, because making room for what's next doesn't begin with adding something new. Maybe it begins with loosening our grip on something old and trusting that God, who is faithful in what was, will also be faithful in what's next. Tomorrow, we're going to continue this conversation with not everything is meant to go with you. Oh, yeah, we may need an extra cup of coffee for that one, friends. Have a beautiful rest of your Monday evening. And remember, you don't have to figure out the whole next chapter today. Just make a little room for what God is beginning to write. Faith, life, leadership. 3 threads, 1 tapestry, 1 life. And remember, God is still weaving.